Welcome to Timeless Mind by Nicolaus podcast. Each week, we explore powerful ideas from the past to help you think deeper, live clearer, and lead yourself well.
Welcome to the deep dive. You know those moments, right? Just a quick glance from someone, maybe an offhand comment, or even just that kind of heavy silence, and bam, suddenly you're reacting, maybe spiraling into doubt or feeling this surge of anger or getting defensive, like before you even really know what's happening. It feels like we're often just running on autopilot, doesn't it? Caught in some default setting, almost like, culture, family, maybe even school have kind of trained us to just react to every little thing from the outside rather than, teaching us how to pause or think or respond from a place of actual choice.
Oh, yeah, that's a really common feeling. We find ourselves giving away our peace, our calm, so easily in those exact moments. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? Have you ever been caught in that sort of wave of reaction, feeling almost like a puppet to whatever life throws at you and just thinking, man, there has to be another way to handle this?
That is the absolute core question we're digging into today. And this whole deep dive, it was actually inspired by a reflection we explored recently over on the YouTube channel, Timeless Mind by Nicolaus. The video is called How I Found Clarity with Socrates. And I have to say, it really struck a chord with me because, I've definitely spent a lot of my life feeling like a passenger in my own reactions.
That's a perfect place to start, really, because it often begins right there with maybe a pivotal moment of self-awareness. For so long, we might just tell ourselves, oh, I'm just sensitive, or think our reactions are, just being honest. But the real shift, the insight, comes when you realize you've been operating almost totally on autopilot, just responding to everything as if you're like constantly under attack. If someone looked away, you felt that sting. If they snapped at you, you felt this compulsion to snap right back.
Yeah.
Everything felt so personal.
It's like finding a little hidden escape hatch in your own mind, isn't it? That exact moment when you catch yourself, like mid-reaction, and for the very first time, you actually pause and ask yourself, hang on, why am I giving away my peace so easily right now?
It doesn't instantly solve everything, not at all. But it really is that first crack in a very old pattern, right? That initial spark where you realize, okay, maybe I'm not just a victim of what happens outside me.
And this act of questioning, of looking for that crack in the old ways, it really echoes this wisdom that's thousands of years old, probably best captured by Socrates himself. His famous line, the unexamined life is not worth living. Now, for a lot of people, the first thought that comes to mind is, okay, that means read more books, accumulate more knowledge from outside.
Yeah, honestly, that's what I always assumed too. Just, read more philosophy books, get smarter that way. But what's the deeper layer there? What was Socrates really getting at with examining life? Well, he was being much more radical than that, much more personal. Socrates wasn't just suggesting a bit of introspection. His method, the Elenchus, it was this relentless cross-examination, but of your own beliefs, to expose the contradictions, the false assumptions hiding underneath. He believed real wisdom wasn't something you piled up from the outside, but something you had to dig out from within, often through the discomfort of questioning your most basic, often unconscious ideas about things. He'd push people to define your terms, see the gaps in your logic, realize what you don't actually know. So it was less about collecting facts and more about purifying your understanding. It meant asking really profound questions about your own choices, your habits, your knee-jerk reactions, your sense of who you even are. We spend so much of our lives just reacting, not really thinking. We end up responding not to reality as it is, but to our assumptions, our fears, all the stories we tell ourselves about reality. The big insight is that so often we're actually just seeing our wounds instead of seeing what's really in front of us.
Right. So, if someone gives you some blunt feedback, you might react with this intense defensiveness, not because the feedback itself was necessarily unfair or abusive, but because it pokes at some old wound, maybe feeling not good enough from way back when. So you're not even really seeing the feedback anymore. You're just seeing that old hurt.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So how do you actually start applying this Socratic way of thinking to those really fast, almost automatic reactions?
Well, it often starts with a practice, a kind of transformative practice, something that can feel like a real turning point. A really powerful question to ask yourself, maybe even to sit down and journal about, is this. What if my reactions aren't actually about them, but about me? And that question, it can hit harder than you might expect because it starts to free you, It frees you from feeling like just a victim of circumstance. You start to realize you're a participant. You have the power to create some space to actually step back for a second. Wow. Yeah, that feels incredibly liberating just thinking about it because it moves away from those typical self-help goals like, I need to be more confident or I have to stop overthinking, which, let's
Oh.
be honest, often just make us feel worse by highlighting where we think we're failing. So this approach shifts the whole game. What does this new practice look like, say, in the heat of the moment?
It means asking those introspective questions right as the reaction is bubbling up or maybe immediately after. Simple questions, really. Like, okay, what am I actually feeling right now? Or
Hmm.
why does this specific thing bother me so much?
Yeah.
Or even just a simple check-in. Am I reacting right now or am I responding?
And the immediate payoff from that, even if you don't have a perfect answer right away, it's huge, isn't it? Just the act of asking, it creates this little pocket of strength, of choice, that feeling of freedom from just being yanked around like a puppet. You get that critical space to choose your next move.
Exactly. You're no longer just being swept away by the current of your emotions. You're starting to recognize your own internal landscape, map it out a bit.
Okay, but it's really important to say, isn't it, that this initial awareness, it doesn't magically make life easy. Actually, for a little while, it can feel like it makes everything louder, more intense. Every reaction you used to just gloss over suddenly becomes really stark and visible. And you might even feel like, wow, I'm more of a mess now than before, just because you're more aware of the mess. It's like those old unconscious patterns. They haven't just disappeared, they've just been sort of cornered. And, things that are cornered, they tend to fight back.
That's a really crucial point. Absolutely. You might still find yourself overreacting sometimes, still shutting down, still caring way too much about things that deep down, don't truly matter. But somewhere in all that noise, there's usually this persistent little glimmer of hope that starts to emerge, like an inner voice, maybe just a whisper. It says, hey, you saw it this time?
Mm.
And that voice, even if it's quiet, that acknowledgement, it's often enough. Enough to encourage you to keep trying, to make the effort again and again. It's like this quiet little nod saying, you're moving in the right direction.
And then over time, that consistency, that showing up again and again, it leads to a gradual shift, right? You start learning to listen inward more, but not to the frantic chatter of overthinking, more to the silence underneath all that noise. There's a part of you that doesn't speak with fear or urgency. It just has this stillness, this patience. That part doesn't shout for attention. It just kind of waits quietly to be heard.
And the outcome of really leaning into that inward journey, it's genuinely transformative. You eventually find you don't feel that constant need to prove anything anymore. Not to other people, sometimes not even to yourself. For maybe the first time ever, there's this sense of having, well, nothing left to outrun, nothing you desperately need to defend. You find you can just walk through life a bit more slowly, more honestly, without that constant undercurrent of fear. Now, the habitual reactions, those cycles of overthinking, maybe feelings of guilt, they might still pop up. But the key difference is they no longer lead you. They're not in the driver's seat anymore. Instead, you find you're led by something quieter now, something clearer. It's not about reaching some state of perfection, not at all. It's more about no longer feeling completely lost in the storm of your own reactions.
And this really feels like Socrates' true gift, doesn't it? He didn't hand us easy answers on a plate. He gave us something far more potent, maybe even more dangerous in a way. Questions. The kinds of questions that start to peel away all those protective stories we tell ourselves, our assumptions, our limiting beliefs. And they leave you face to face with the truth. Maybe not always the truth you wanted to hear, but the kind of truth that ultimately sets you free. So if we bring it right back to that core idea for everyone listening, what if it's not about them? What's the most practical thing we can take away for those moments when we feel triggered?
It really comes down to this. The next time you feel that trigger go off, just pause. Not to suppress the feeling, not to push it down or ignore it, but actually try and see it. And crucially, to see you in that moment, not just focus on them. Remember, you don't have to react automatically. That's the old pattern. You always have the choice to return to yourself, even just for breath, to listen for that quieter voice inside, to try and lead with stillness instead of reaction. The goal isn't to become some kind of emotionless master. It's simply to notice, to pause, to choose. And peace, in this sense, it starts not by trying to avoid life's bumps and challenges, but by learning to lead your own internal experience from within. This whole journey, it isn't about reaching some flawless final destination. It's really about remembering who you are underneath it all, especially when the world seems determined to make you forget.
That's a powerful way to put it. So summing it all up, it really boils down to the profound impact of just pausing and questioning those knee-jerk reactions. It's about moving from that passive, almost automatic reaction to a conscious choice, all guided by that timeless Socratic wisdom.
Exactly. So maybe something to think about as you go about your week is this. What's maybe one familiar reaction you have, something that happens often that you could choose to just pause on and examine this week? Just try shifting, even slightly, from that autopilot mode to a more conscious choice.
Yeah, just one small shift. And if this deep dive resonated with you today, we share a lot more reflections like this, looking at ancient wisdom for modern clarity over on the YouTube channel Timeless Mind by Nikolaos. Please do join us for our next deep dive. We'll be testing Plato's quotes in real life. Should be interesting.
Thanks for reflecting with us here at Timeless Mind. Ancient wisdom for modern clarity. If today's idea sparked something in you, share it, live it, and pass it on. See you in the next episode.